None of them's open? Which one? The other one's not open on Shabbat or during the week? Wow. Let's try this one. Hebrew, half Yiddish, German, basically means fellowship. Hey Joel, can I interest you in a mincha? Going cheap. We're going to begin mincha on page 214 with the ashrei in just a moment.
אשרי יושב ביתך, חוד ילוך הסלה, אשרי עם שכח עליו, אשרי עם שנאי אלוהיו. תפילת אדוני ידבר פי, בברך אבו שם קשר לעולם באב, אנחנו נברך יה, נצבר עולם, הללויה, ועל ציון גואל. אתה קדוש ושתילות ישרו וקרזל זה בימה, קדוש 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 אמרי צבאות מלוך על הארץ כבודו. ותישני רוח ושמע אחרי כל רעש גדול, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ויפתחו לך ידי שמך, כי לא עזבת דרשך אדוני, אדוניך בזמן צדקו ידיל תורה בידיר. יקדל ויקדש מרבה, ויאמר דברך ירדה, וימליך מלכותה, בחייכון וימיך. חייך בית ישראל, בגלו זמן קריב, יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ומעמיה, יתברך ישתבח ויתברך נעשה. דוד ותלש מאת קודשה בריחו, לעולם לך בחרתה, ושירתה, תושבתה ונחמתה, נמירם ביומה, ויאמרו אמן. ואני תפילתי לך, אדוני את רצון אלוהים ברב חסדך, ענני באמת ישך. ויהי בן אהרון, ויאמר משה, כמו אדוני יפוץ אוהביך, וינוסו מפניך מפניך, כי מציון תצא תורה, דבר אדוני מירושלים. Baruch Shenatan Torah Lemo Yisrael, B'Kedushato.
I'm getting the Torah from the sanctuary, so I don't have to roll. Should have been here. So in the meantime, Joel will give a drash and tell 3 jokes.
Okay. So this morning's parsha was Chaye Sarah, in which the first actual purchase of land in Israel took place. Was Abraham bought the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the cave of Machpelah, from one of the residents, Ephron. And it reminded me of a famous midrash that I will tell you, and you can believe it or not believe it, but when Yaakov first saw Rachel, his beautiful wife, the Torah says he started crying. Why was he crying? Any guesses? He first sees her, cried. So the midrash says that he knew through a prophecy that not only would he marry her, but that when they both died, she would not be buried next to him in Ma'arat HaMachpelah because she was going to die on the road. So Kever Rachel, her burial place, was somewhere different. And so his other wife, her sister Leah, was in Kever Rachel, was in the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, not the one that he loved, Rachel. And there you have it. Perhaps the most ridiculous midrash you'll ever hear, but there it is. Very beautiful and romantic.
Now I'm sorry I missed it.
Happy to fill you in. Kavul Adonai iti, v'narosh v'yachtav, l'chad ha'gla v'grot. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
So we're reading is Parshat Toldot. Find it. Chumash. Page 146.
Chapter 25, verse 19, where Hebrew follows up with different
Does anybody have a Yortzeit need an Aliyah this week? Joel does. Anyone else a Yortzeit? Hakol havu gulan hinucha bod la Torah. Yamod. Joey, take the first Aliyah. Yamod. Yosef Yaakov? Yosef Yaakov ben Michael. Barachamach Ali Aroshna Baruch Shantan Torah Limosh V'Kedushato Batem B'Kimochem Chaimochem Ayom.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai
Baruch Adonai Mevorach L'Olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'Natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Ve'ele toldo Yitzchak ben Abraham. Abraham holidet Yitzchak. Vahi Yitzchak ben Ephraim shana v'kachto et Rivka. V'petuel ha'arami mipadan Aram achod. Lavan ha'arami lo isha. V'yetar Yitzchak l'Adonai l'nochach ishto ki akara hi. Vayater lo Adonai v'atah Rivka ishto. Vayirotetsu habanim b'kirba v'atomrim kein lamazeh anochi v'telech lidrosh et Adonai.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'Chayei Olam Natan B'Tocheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Rebecca, second Aliyah. Tamod. Tamod, Rivka bat Avigdor Yechezkel ve'Esther Liyashniya. Verse 23.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach L'Olam
Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach L'Olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'Natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Adonai la shnei goyim b'vitnech u'shnei le'umim mi'ayich yiparedu u'lom ilom ye'ematz v'rav yavod sa'ir vayimlu yameha laledet v'hinei tomim b'vitna vayetze harishon admoni kulo ki aderet se'ar vayikru shemo Esav v'acharechen yatsa achiv v'yado chesed ba'akev Esav v'yikra shemo Yaakov v'Yitzchak ben shishim shana b'ledet otaham.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'Chayei Olam Natan B'Tocheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Joel Yamod. Yechim Yahu ben Harav Chaim Eliyahu ben Achama Reis Aliyah Shlishit. Baruch Adonai
Amen. Vayigdalu hanarim vayhi Esav ish yodei atzayid ish sadeh v'Yaakov ish tam yoshev ohalim v'yehav Yitzchak et Esav kitzayid b'fiv v'Rivka ohevet Yitzchak et Yaakov vayaz et Yaakov nazir v'yavo Esav min hasadeh v'hu ayev vayemer Esav el Yaakov haliteni na min hadom hazeh ki ayev anochi al ken karashamo Edom vayomer Yaakov michra chayom et bechoratecha li vayomer Esav hine anochi holech lamut v'lamazeh li bechorah vayomer Yaakov hishava li chayom vayishava lo vayimkor bechorato liYaakov v'Yaakov natan leEsav lechem unsid adashim vayochal vayesh vayakom vayelech Vayives Esav et Habchorah Vayhira ba'aret milvan harav harishon asher haya b'mei Abraham. Vayelech Yitzchak el Avimelech melech Plishtim gerara. Vayira elav Adonai vayomer al tered Mitzrayma shechon ba'aretz asher omar elecha kur ba'aretz hazot vayeh imcha v'yavorchecha ki lechol zaracha etena kol haratzot ha'el v'hakimoti et hashvua asher nishbati li'Avraham avicha Bir beiti zaracha kachokvei hashamayim v'natati l'zaracha et kol haratzot ha'el v'yitbaruchu b'zaracha kol goyei ha'aretz. Hey, kevash shema Avraham b'koli v'yishmor mishmarti mitzvotai chukotai v'torotai.
Yamod Hamagbiya Esel Yirach Torah. Yirach Torah Tamod Hagolelet. Share. Please rise. Like your step. Vezot Torah Asher Moshe Rivnei Bnei Yisrael B'yad Adonai B'yad Moshe Etzayin Hi Lamachazikim Ba V'tomchei HaMe'ushar Etzayin Hi Lamachazikim Ba V'tomchei HaMe'ushar Deracheh Darchei Noam V'chol Netivoteh Shalom Deracheh Darchei Noam V'chol Netivoteh Shalom Yai 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 Yanai 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 We'll pause and do Ne'amale Rachmim for Joel's, your mother. I'll give this next. Give it to Joel. Here, Joel.
Rachamim shochem bamramim hamitzei melechon nechon tachar kanfei hashchina b'malot kedoshim etorim kezor haraki amasirim v'nishmat imi morati nechama rezel bat krindel v'nachamendel shalcha le'olama began eden dehemenuchata anabal harachim asireh b'seiseh kanafecha le'olamim utzor b'tzorachim v'nishmata Adonai hu nachlata v'tanuach shalom mishkava v'namar Amen.
Share a memory of your mother, Joel.
My mother was extremely right-wing when it came to Israel. And I remember very well that once she was visiting us and David Ellenson happened to be at our house. And David said something, although I don't think he was a dyed-in-the-wool right-winger, but he said something a little bit to the right. And she points to him and says to me, "He's so smart, Joel. He's such a brilliant man. No wonder he's the head of the whole reform movement." So anyway, God only knows what she would say. And I'm glad, actually, she's not alive right now to see what's going on. So may her memory be blessed.
Amen. Anyone know how your site in person or on Zoom? Okay. We'll continue with the service to return the Sefer Torah to the Ark. Hallelujah on page 221 in the Lev Shalem.
Yehalu et Shem Adonai, ki yeskab Shemo levado. Yikadav Yikadash Mirabah, Yamad Rachute, Yamlich Malchute, Bechayechon, Yamecha, Chayedecha Beit Yisrael, Vagalos Mankari, Imru Amen, Eshmer Rabban Lorach, Maya Maya, Yibarach Yishtabach, Yibarach Yamin Naseh, Vidabit Labihach Shmei Kudusha, Berichu, Lelam Mel Bechata, Beshirata, Tujrata, Benachmata, Yamiram Yama, Imru Amen.
Yamidah said in a quiet whisper, being 223. Official Amidah begins on page 223, Kedusha 224.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Be'emoteinu Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gam El Chasadim Tovim Mekonei HaKol V'Zocher Chesdei Avot Umevi Goel B'nei V'Hem Lo'an Shmo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Foked Moshiach Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Aram Foked Sarah אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיים איתם את הרב להושיע, משיב הרוח מוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים וחסד לחיים איתם רחמים רבים, שמח מרפאים מרפא חולים ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה מצמיח ישועה, נאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. מקדש שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב ביד ממך וכרזה, על זה ויאמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות מלוא כל הארץ כבודו למתם ברוך יאמרו. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, בקודשך כתוב לאמור. ברוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון לדבר הללויה. הדור אדוני גדלך ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו. בפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. אתה אחד בשמך אחד ומקיימך ישראל, גוי אחד בארץ, תפארת גדולה. V'yater Yeshua Yamucha Kushal Yamchan Hatata Abraham Yagel Yitzchak Yiranein Yaakov Avanav Yanuchu Bo Menuchat Ava Unedava Menuchat Emet Emunah Menuchat Shalom V'Shabbat V'Ashkeit V'Vetach Menuchat Shlema Tata Rotzeba Yakir Pnach V'Yedu Kimet Chayim Menuchatam Yamenuchatam Yakishu Et Shemecha Eloheinu V'Eloteinu V'Tei Menuchatenu Gadshenu B'Mitzotecha V'Tein Chalkeinu B'Toratecha Sameinu Mitzavecha V'Samcheinu Mishuatecha V'Taher Libeinu Li'avdecha B'Yamet V'Anchilenu Adonai B'Yahava V'Raton Shabbat Kadshecha V'Yinuchva Yisrael V'Kadshei Shemecha Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat V'Tzei Adonai Eloheinu B'Yamcha Yisrael V'Tilatam V'Shevet HaBadah L'Dir B'Techa T'Tam Yahavatek B'Raton V'Til Raton Tamid Avodat Yisrael Amecha V'Techa Zanaynenu V'Shivachal Tzion Barachamim Baruch Atah Adonai Amachazir Shechinato L'Tzion Modim Anachnu Lach Shatehu Adonai V'Eloteinu Le'olam V'Oed Tzur Chayinu Mogen Yishenu Tahu L'Dor Nodeh L'chon Seperti L'Techa Al Chayinu HaMisurim Yadecha V'Al Nishmotinu Ha'Lach Only Sechel Shebach Yom Iman, one Techa B'Tovatecha, Shebachol 8 Erev Kevet Harayim, Atov Kilo Chol Rachamecha, V'yam Rachem Kilo Tamu Chasadecha, Me'olam Kivinu Lach, V'yal Kulam, Yiparach Pidram Shekom Alken Tamid Le'olam V'ed, V'chol HaChaim Yadu Chasela, V'yalu Shecha B'yamet, Heli Shoten B'Esotenu Sela, Baruch Atah Adonai, Atov Shimcha L'chan Hodot, Shalom Rabbi, Shalom Chaviel Kol Yoshvei Tivot Asim Li'olam, Ketom El Chadon L'chol HaShalom, V'tov Yinecha, V'vorech Damcho Yisrael V'chol Eituch Hashem V'shlamecha, Baruch Atah Adonai, Amorech Et Amo Yisrael, B'Shalom. Tidkatcha Tzedek Li'olam, V'taratcha Emet, V'tidcha Elohim Admarom Asher Asida Gedolot, Elohim Yichamacha, Tidkasa Kareel, Mishpatechet Ham Rabbah, Adamu Behema, Toshia Adonai. Yegadav Yegadash, Shmei Rabbah. Yamad Yivrach, Yeteb Yam Lichmach, Tebech, Aychon Limechon, Chadach Obed Yisrael, Bagal Havas Makar Vimeru. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mivarach. Ve'olam Olam Me'omaya Yitbarach. Yitbarach, Yishabach, Yitbarach, Amin Asebit, Tatabi, 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 Shmei Kudishah. Barichu Leila Min Chabachata B'Shirata, Tukrata V'Nachmata, Dami Ram B'Yama V'Yimaru. Tekabel Salon V'Oton D'Chol Yisrael, Kadam V'Oton Yisrael V'Yimaru. Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chaim, Aleinu V'Kresha V'Yimaru. Oseh Shalom B'Mroma, V'Yaseh Shalom. Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael V'Yimaru. Amen. Aleinu L'Shabeach, Adonai Kol.
231.
Agatubah Techaraim Loch, Leolam Va'ed, V'nemar V'yadonai, V'melech al Kaaretz, V'yom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad, U'Shemo Echad. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shmei Rabbah. V'yalma Dibra Chirutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayei D'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agala V'zman Kariv, V'yimru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, V'olam V'yalmaya. Yiparach, V'yishtabach, V'yipa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shmei de Kudisha Brichu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechemata Da'amiran B'Oma V'Imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. V'Seh Shalom B'Mromav V'Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen.
Off, Joel. Those who might be joining on, I don't see you. We're going to take about a 10-minute pause while people in the room get some food for Sudash sheet, and then we'll start our Torah study. So bear with us. Those in the room, go get some food. We'll start Torah study about 10 minutes. We bring it upstairs. We'll.
Oh yeah, that's right. In the office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I know you know well.
Yeah.
Part two of them, they drive that he felt bad. They didn't have gifts to give her, even though Isaac had given gifts when he meets Rebecca. Yeah. He felt bad they didn't give gifts to Rachel. He was concerned about her well-being in this world and in the next world. Hey, there, Bobby. Where should we Jolie, do me a favor, will you close the doors because there might be some people coming back and forth. Okay, yeah. Thank you. there might be a bat mitzvah party, and some of the workers might be coming to set things up. So I just wanted to be a little quiet here. Thanks, Joey. Oops, you got to give that one a good pull. Good.
Did you see the context of today's Solid Times? Yes. Because Paul Kessler made the whole book made it sound like people are not happy with the way it's being handled.
I saw that. Yeah, I read that article. You know him, Rosa?
No, but somebody in my people class said, we have someone that lives in Fountain Oaks, and I think it's like a big.
Very, very sad.
His wife is retired.
Absolutely. And she too. She didn't go through the trauma directly, but was very, very poised and articulate. Again, in their second language. I've been studying Hebrew for 40 years, and I couldn't speak that well rehearsed in Hebrew. Shabbat shalom, everyone. We're going to go deep into a verse that I'm sure many of you have studied many times before. You might even know the initial midrash we're going to share, but we're going to go do like midrashic work on the midrash. The pasuk is the verse about Rivka's pregnancy. Right, she's barren, as her mother-in-law Sarah was. She pleads to God, or actually Isaac pleads to God on her behalf. God remembers her, and she goes from having no children in her womb to 2 children in her womb. He tumim bevitna, they were twins in her belly. It's unclear if the Torah wants us to know that they were twins in her belly, or wants us to think that she knew. Right? I'm sure the ultrasound technology was very, very rudimentary back then, so we may have knowledge that she did not have, and that's significant. Except that the midrash, as we're about to read, imagines that she was aware that there was something happening in her belly that was not normal, and she was aware of a duality. Okay, and let's remember that duality, because the duality can be related to 2 different human beings or dual urges inside the same human being. Vayirotzetsu habanim. Everyone has the sheets. Vayirotzetsu habanim bekirba. The boys rotzetz. I'm going to untranslate that, in her innards. Right. Rotzetz can mean a lot of different things. It's translated here as struggled. It could be grappled. It could be like wrestled. We're not sure exactly the way the verse wants us to understand it, but it's whatever it is. It's a lot of movement, and it's uncomfortable for her because she feels it. She feels it so much that she takes us, depending on our understanding of the next phrase, to a place of existential wonder and morose feelings. Vatomer imken, and she said, if so the pshat seems to suggest that if so is related to the Vayirotzetsuha benim bekirba. If it's going to be like this, if my pregnancy is going to be like this, and if this kind of portends something about what their births are going to be, lama ze anochi. A lot of ways of translating that. The simplest says, why am I? When someone says, why am I, what are they really asking? Why am I alive? And what's the unspoken part of that? I'm not sure I want to be alive. Right? If someone says, why am I alive? They're either asking, what's the purpose of life? Or it's an important question. Doesn't seem to be what she's saying here. It's not a what's the purpose of life version of why am I alive. It's like, oh my God, Why should I be alive through this? This is intolerable. Vatelech, she goes, lidrosh et Adonai. It's such an interesting phrase. We're not going to focus on that on this, but in and of itself, it's an interesting phrase. Lidrosh means to search. Midrash at the core is from the root darash, which means to search, to seek out a deeper meaning of something. But she's, the et in biblical Hebrew can be a direct object, and it can also be with. So it could be that she went to seek out with God, meaning to seek out answers with God, from God, or she went to seek out God, right? And in modern Hebrew, the et is only a direct object. In biblical Hebrew, the et can also mean with, okay? So that's some of the possibilities of what the verse means. Before we look at Rashi, who quotes a midrash, some of you may know, any questions or comments on the verse itself? I think as it jumps out at the verse. Okay, so I'm going to repeat for those who are on Zoom. Marshall's asking, what's the zeh in Lama zeh anochi? What are the possibilities of what zeh could be? Because zeh means this. What are the possibilities of what the antecedent to zeh is?
I think the word ma'avak means a struggle. That would make sense to me only because it's masculine tense, masculine gender.
So the zeh is masculine. So whatever zeh is referring to is masculine. So Marshall is suggesting the word ma'avak, the struggle, or any singular masculine noun that might refer to her experience in the belly. But presumably the zeh is what we just learned about, the experience of her being pregnant with these two. Any other comments, questions on the verse itself? Okay. This is Rashi. Rashi's quoting a midrash. And the midrash is going to play around with the fact that there are 3-letter Hebrew roots where the second letter is doubled, and etymologists have opinions that suggest that it might be that it's intensifying of the 2-letter root with the second letter doubled. So if ratzatz doesn't mean something entirely by itself, ratzatz, it might be an intensifying of ratz. What does ratz mean? Run. Okay, so the midrash is built on the supposition that one of the things that ratzatz, which is the root of vayirotzatsu, means is running, but not just like a jaunting, but like an intensive running. Okay, vayirotzatsu. Al korchacha, against your will, meaning you have to admit, hamikra hazeh omer darsheni. This verse is screaming out, interpret me. This is a wonderful use by Rashi of this phrase. Ze omer darsheni is Jew speak for something's amiss here. It's used even today, even not in textual terms. Like if, I don't know, you come upon a situation that is confounding, you say Ze omer darsheni. This is like calling out to be interpreted. Why is it a wonderful use by Rashi? Because it's in the verse itself, even though it's not the word he's speaking on, that we have the phrase Vatelish lidrosh et Adonai, same root, right? So Rashi knows that the notion of searching something out for deeper meaning is actually sourced in this verse, in the second half of it. He's saying it's the first half of it that is itself calling out for midrash. Shesatam mahi ritzitza zo v'chatav imkein lama ze anochi. What was the content? What was the experience of this ritzitza at the moment he's using both tzadis in the root, whatever vayirotzatsu means? What was the experience of this ritzitza such that she was driven to a point where she said, why am I even alive? Right? It suggests that those two things were connected. And as a reader saying, we need to know more about this, right? There are complicated pregnancies. I've never been pregnant, but some of you in the room have, right? And there are some pregnancies that are deeply uncomfortable. It's got to be a pretty harsh pregnancy for someone to say, I'm not sure I even want to be alive, right? So what was going on? We need an answer, Rashi says, to explain why the discomfort of this pregnancy with twins got to such a level that she questioned whether or not existence was worth it, right? That's the question. By the way, Rashi, interestingly, those of you in my Rashi class on Wednesdays know this, oftentimes Rashi does not ask the question. He just gives you the answer. And you have to divine the question backwards. Here, he's telling you what the question is. The question is, what could have been so problematic about her experience of the pregnancy, the ritzitza, such that she would ask such an existential question? Rabotenu darshu l'shon ritzah. The rabbis drashed it out as if ratzatz is the language of ratz or ritzah, running. And Rashi is telling us something in the language here. He's saying, I'm not 100% convinced that that's actually the meaning of the Hebrew word, but I think that I want to bring to you what the sages, how they understood it, and they understood it midrashically, interpretably. It may not be the exact pshat, but there's something to it, right? Kshehaita overet al pitchei Torah shel Shem ve'ever. Whenever Rivka was walking through her neighborhood, and she would pass by, you have to suspend some disbelief here for a second, pass by the doors of the yeshiva of Shem and Ever. Shem and Ever are who? Want to know?
Aren't they Noah's?
Okay, so Shem is one of Noach's descendants, Shem, Ham, Yafet, and a further descendant later on was Ever. Ever is probably the word from which we get Ivri, a Hebrew, is a descendant of Ever, and there is a expansive, midrashic, imaginative understanding that these descendants of Noach, before Abraham, not only before Sinai and Moshe, before Abraham, what did they do? They established yeshivas. They were yeshivas where Torah was studied, and the Shulchan Aruch was studied, and the 20th century Mishnah Berurah was studied. They studied it all, right? And inside the midrashic imagination, this is not strange. This is, of course, so what else would they have been doing? Either they were engaging in idolatry. No, some people in that generation were already studying pre-Torah. Whenever Rivka would walk by the houses of the many ancient pre-Abrahamic yeshivot, sorry, not pre-Abrahamic, what am I talking? Well, right, they were established pre-Abraham, but in this generation they're post-Abraham. Yaakov, one of the babies to be born, Ratz would run from the root Bayiru Tetsu, Umefarches, and would kind of squirm, let's say, to come out. The image being infant fetus Yaakov had such a sense of Torah that whenever his mother would walk by a yeshiva, he would say, I want to be born now and study Torah now. I'm coming out right now. I want to be a student in this yeshiva. That's my goal in life, right? There's obviously, we're in the realm of symbolism here. It's somewhat fanciful, somewhat laughable symbolism, but serious symbolism that she had two babies, one of whom before birth was destined to be a yid, to study text, overet al petach avodat elilim, and whenever she would walk by palaces of idolatry, Esav mefarches, let's say, Esav, the other one, would squirm and try to emerge. Remember that in the rabbinic imagination, Esav equals Edom equals Rome equals Christianity. It's one association, right? Whether or not that's fair historically, right? The Romans were considered to be the descendants of the kingdom of Edom. Edom descended from Esav. So first, it represents idolatry, the idolatry of the Romans. It represents the suppression of Jewish expression, and then eventually supplanted by Christianity when Christianity took over the Holy Roman Empire. That's all built in to the rabbinic imagination if you're thinking about this in the 3rd, 4th, 5th century CE, and certainly Rashi, right? Rashi living in the 11th century in the era of the Crusades. To him, Esav are the Crusaders. Esav are the Christian marauders who might say they're monotheists, but to the medieval Jews they were not. They are their own, this generations of idolaters. They all descended from Esav. Esav bad, Yaakov good, and it started in utero. Okay. So the reason I brought that midrash is because you needed to understand the next one. We're understanding that she was experiencing this internal struggle in her womb with the next generation already fighting about what the true path in life ought to be. Okay. On Lidrosh et Adonai, which is the Rashi on the next comment of the verse, next part of the verse, that she went to seek out God. Why? According to Rashi, this is source 3. Shiagidla ma tehe besofa. That God would tell her, or that someone would tell her, what would be, if you literally translate it, in her end. Besofa, besof shala. What would be the end of her? So now I'm asking you, what do you think Rashi is saying? What do you think Rashi is saying, the verse is saying, when Rashi says that she went to this oracle so that God would tell her what would be her end, how it all would end? What do you think he's saying? What information was she trying to learn? Okay, so Irva's saying that maybe what Rashi's saying is how the pregnancy would end, right? Who's going to come out first? Who's going to be dominant? And will my turmoil be, I don't know, resolved or be worth anything? Okay, what else? What else could she mean, according to Rashi? Fran? So She wants not just oracle for the end of her pregnancy, she wants oracle for the end of time. She sees into the future Yaakov, Esav, Jew, oppressor of Jew, Jew, Roman, Jew, idolater, Jew, Christian, Jew, a particular type of Christian who oppresses the Jew. And she wants to know, if I'm suffering so much now, is it at least going to end up with us on top? Right? Am I suffering this much, and then once they're born and they have children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, it's still going to be a struggle for my people? She wants to know, is this suffering worth it? Maybe it'll be worth it. Maybe I'm about to give birth to the one who's going to be dominant, who's going to rid the world of idolatry and be dominant over the descendants of Esav. All right, I'll sacrifice my comfort for the next few months for that. That's okay. Maybe that's what she was asking. What else? Other possibilities, Joel?
I think so. What happens when I die? Who's going to take care of these children? Who's going to die? But maybe she suspects, of course, with some kind of prophecy that Yitzchak will favor Esau. What's going to happen to Yaakov after I die?
Fascinating. So Joel said, for the sake of those on Zoom, maybe the sofa is literally at the end of her. Sof shelah, right? I am bearing these boys. They're already fighting each other. Since I have a little bit of Ruach HaKodesh, a little bit of, prophecy in my own, I know that my hubby is going to love one of them. And once I'm gone, what's going to happen to the one I imagine is going to be my favorite, Yaakov? Okay? Several different possibilities. Which one of them is right about what Rashi meant? We don't know. All we know is that there was something, according to Rashi, that she wanted to find out the conclusion, the resolution. By the way, a very human urge. Right? Don't you want to know how it's going to end in Gaza? Don't you want to know how it's going to end in the Middle East? Don't you want to? Don't we all want our most confounding challenges to be resolved for us? Wouldn't it be great if we had an oracle we could go to and say, please, I shake the 8-ball. How's it going to turn out? So this makes sense inside the story. It also makes sense outside the story. It makes sense inside the story because this is a woman suffering in pregnancy and she wants to know, is it going to be worth it? Are they going to live? Who's going to be in charge? And this makes sense outside the story. Every midrash is operating inside and outside the story, right? There's the mashal and the nimshal. Outside the story is we would like to be able to have our grand mysteries and challenges resolved for us so that we know, is our suffering going to be worth it? And of course, we rarely have that opportunity because no one has that pure prophecy.
Fortune tellers, tarot card readers,
of course,
readers.
Yeah,
people definitely do spend money.
Correct. It's an
parties where they have people that are going to do your tarot cards, and
it's an age-old human urge to wonder and believe that someone has answers that are obscure to us in a given moment. With that in mind, look at source 4. Hamek davar. The words Hamek davar means go deep into the thing. It's the commentary in the Torah written by the Netziv. Netziv is an acronym for Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in Volozhin in the end of the 19th century and has a wonderful, relatively easy to understand, meaning pretty simple Hebrew commentary on the Torah that's still a beloved commentary to read today. Look what he says. Ha'ikar keperesh Rashi v'Rashbam. The main way, Ikar, to understand this verse is as Rashi explained it, and as Rashbam, who was Rashi's grandson, as he explained it. Rashbam has his own commentary on the Torah. Not all of it is extant. There are certain verses of the Torah that has no Rashbam. Sometimes it's very interesting to see how Rashbam clearly learned something from his Saba, and sometimes it's interesting to see how Rashbam disagreed with his Saba. And I forgot the ages. I know that Rashbam knew his grandfather, but I don't know how old he was when Rashi died. But he's saying, basically, in this situation, Rashi and Rashbam got it right. Lish'ol et hanavi, that she went to ask the Navi, the prophet. You can ask a question on this in this moment, which is, which prophet? What prophet was alive back then? Was she? We would have thought that she went to ask God directly. He's saying that she went to go ask some prophet. Dat Adonai, the knowledge of God or the wisdom of God, urotzono bazeh, and what God wants by this. The Lo Ramban, don't understand it like Nachmanides, 13th century Spanish commentator, Zal, of blessed memory, sheperesh tefillah, right? So if you look at Ramban's commentary on this verse, I didn't bring it. Ramban says, what does it mean when it says that she went to seek out God? She went to pray, right? That makes sense, right? I assume that one of the reasons you came to pray this morning is to have an audience with God, to hear God and to be heard by God. So maybe Ramban says what she went to do is to go daven. She went just to, not for answers, but just to be in the presence of God. According to Hamek Devar, that's not what it means, and it's interesting how he explains why. The ilu tefillah, if she was just going to daven, lo hayala leilech l'makom acher. She'd have to go anywhere. He's focusing on the fact that in the verse it says vatelech lijosh Adonai. She went somewhere. She went on a journey, and the Hamek Devar is saying, Ramban, if she was just davening, why would she have had to go anywhere? She could have just davened right there. V'harei nitkabla tfilat Yitzchak kan. Isaac had just prayed to God, Vayatar Yaakov el Adonai, Vayatar Yitzchak el Adonai, that Yitzchak pleaded with God to remember Rivka's womb. Did he go anywhere to pray? No, he prayed right there. And guess what? He was heard because she got pregnant. So don't read it as she went to go pray, because if she went to go pray, you wouldn't have needed the word batelech, she went anywhere. Ella lidrosh minavi, rather she went to go seek out a prophet, shehu ro'eh, a prophet who sees, ma shebenistar v'ne'elam, that which is hidden and concealed. And then he goes into a little mini sermon on two different types of prophecies or prophets that he understands do exist in the world. Shnei ofanei navi. There are two styles or types of prophets. Achat mehashem ma shemedaber imo l'sha'ah. Prophet number one is the prophet who's getting a clear line of communication from God as to what God wants to say to God's people now, right? So the biblical prophets that we might put in this category are like Jeremiah, right? Jeremiah walking around Jerusalem before the destruction of the first temple, who is castigating the contemporaneous Jewish community for their idolatry and for their bloodshed and for the way in which they are throwing off the yoke of God, and God is angry at them. And according to Jeremiah, he has a clear pathway to what God wants to say. He's communicating to the people what God wants to say to them now. That's one type of prophecy. Bet, what's the other type of prophet? Haroeh dvarim ne'almim, the one who sees hidden and concealed truths. Beruach HaKodesh, through the Holy Spirit. V'zeh ha'ofan haya nikra roeh. This is the type of prophet in the Hebrew. The word is which is called a one who sees. Right, the English word for the type of prophet in that category is a seer. Right, seer. Right, the one who sees deep things. The Avraham Hayanavi. By the way, Abraham is alive at this part of the story. Right, so Avraham was. Wait a second. Abraham was just buried. Right. So Abraham is alive. Ba'ofen harishon hayanavi ba'ofen harishon levad. But he was only the prophet of the first category. He couldn't see into the future. He didn't have Ruach HaKodesh. He was just a portal through which God could communicate to the world. Mishum hachi, because she couldn't go to her father-in-law, Abraham, because he wasn't that kind of prophet. Halacha ladam gadol. She went to some other great man. Interesting that the Netziv is trying to imagine that there was another person in the generation of Abraham who was an even greater prophet, or at least a prophet of a different type. Sheyada'a, that she knew of him, ki hu roeh v'yodia, that he sees things and he knows things. Right? So if you boil down the Hamek Davar, into something concise, basically saying that she went to get her questions answered. She couldn't go to the type of prophet who only was delivering the word of God at that moment. She had to go to the type of prophet who could see into the future and resolve how things were going to turn out. Reactions to that? Yes, Fran.
From reading this, it doesn't sound to me that Rashi is saying that the second type of prophet is a greater type of prophet who has a specific path. It could be, okay, and I think we don't know what it was like that. There may have been common to have seers around, so you could kind of like a therapist, as it were. So tell me what's going to happen in my life kind
Mhm.
of thing.
Right. So,
So-
not necessarily a man greater than Abraham, but someone who is great in this particular regard.
They have
and
they're a specialist.
a specialist prophet who can see into the future and resolve how things are going to turn out.
But I'm not even sure a Navi, but more of a Ro'eh, kind of a seer, kind of
Yeah.
looking in the crystal ball, kind of Mahavdir. Well, maybe. Anyway, here's your mic back.
Well, hold it for a second. I have one here. So, right. So the crystal ball looker who can see how things are going to be in the future is not necessarily the classic biblical category of a Navi, right? We think of a Navi as a truth teller in this moment, right? The one who is communicating God's clearest instructions now, but she needed something else. She wanted to know how it was going to happen in the future, and even Avram couldn't tell her that. Anyone else in this section? Okay. Yes, Rebecca.
It strikes me as interesting that she doesn't consider that she can ask God herself, that you have to have some sort of intermediary, this prophet, in order to inquire of God. It's an interesting relationship that must have been more, the norm, right? That you have this prophet as intermediary.
Yeah, and the question that your comment makes me think about is this a gender thing, right? Is this that had it been a male character, the male would have been able to go directly to God, or is this the distinction between prayer on the one hand, which is just between you and the Holy One, and predictive prophecy, where you need a particular specialization, how it's conferred upon you in the ancient world, who knows, right? How anyone understood that person actually was accurate, who knows? But right, she goes to find someone to do this task for her because she's not capable of asking it of God herself. Okay, turn the page. Go to source 5. Remember, I said before that whatever is happening in her womb, it's representing a duality, right? And so the primary way that duality is understood is a duality between two children, and then two peoples, and then two nations, and two ways of understanding the world, right? The Jew and basically everyone else, right? This sets up the classic and tragic dynamic we're in right now on some level, right? There's a line in Talmud that's used over and over again that says Leolam Esav soneh et Yaakov. It always has been, and it always will be, that Esav hates Jacob. Basically, the Talmud's way of saying to us 2,000 years later, oh, there's still anti-Semitism in the world? Yeah, we know. Yeah, of course, because it has always been, since they were struggling in the womb, that they were going to be understanding reality in different ways. And don't waste your time trying to eradicate this age-old hatred. It's the way it's always been. Okay, that's one way of understanding the duality playing out in Rivka's womb. It's not the only way of understanding this duality, and for that we are thankful for Hasidic texts, because Hasidic texts read against the grain, even against midrashic grain. So this is Kol Simcha, the voice of Simcha. I love names of rabbinic texts because what they often did is they would take their name and they would find a biblical phrase that was evocative for people, but also said something about what they were doing. So Kol Simcha, the voice of Simcha, is because his name was Rabbi Simcha. But Kol Sason v'Kol Simcha, but he's also naming his book after the prophecy that one day the land of Israel will be filled with the sound of joy and gladness and the sound of bride and groom. This is Rabbi Simcha Bunim of Pshischa. Okay, this is what he says on the verse. Svura hayta Rivka. Rivka had the following thought: Kiven echad huzeh. Again, he's also living before the age of ultrasound, but he's saying she didn't know that she was going to have twins, right? How could she have known, right? How could she have been so sensitive to know that all the ritzitza going on her belly represented 4 legs and not 2 legs? All she knew is that her innards were in turmoil. She didn't know it was twins. And if she didn't know it was twins, then according to him, none of what she was experiencing had to do with the future battle between Esav and Yaakov, between the Jew and the non-Jew. She didn't know she was giving birth to anything more than one person, one nation. Va'otopirchus, that squirming to get out, shehum mefarches latzeit, that he was trying to get out with, liad pitchei batei midrash. On the one hand, as she would walk by yeshivas, uliad pitchei avodah zarah, and she would walk by the houses of idolatry. Eino ela hama'avak, that's the word that Marshall used before. was nothing other than the struggle, hasmali, the symbolic struggle, bein hayetzer hatov, or bein hayetzer hara. So according to the Hasidic text here, this is not the age-old battle between the Jew and the one who hates the Jew, but the age-old battle within the Jew, within the human being, to be drawn to things that are good and right in the world, and to be drawn towards negative influences, the Yetzer Hara. Shepam mitgaber hayetzer hara. Sometimes the evil inclination wins. Lihitgaber means to be victorious. V'humavakesh larutz la'avodah zarah. And that evil inclination is begging you, the part of you that has from Yetzer Hara, like raise your hand if you have Yetzer Hara, right? All of us, right? So the part of us when we're experiencing moments where the Yetzer Hara is winning, then when we walk by the literal or proverbial houses of sin, we feel ourselves getting all worked up. We're drawn to it. We have urges. We have base human urges and lurid urges and urges to sin, and they get excited when they have an opportunity to do so. That does happen. If we don't want to admit it, we're fooling ourselves and other people. Upam, sometimes, thank God, mitgaber hayetzer hatov. Sometimes the positive inclination wins. The positive inclination says, I need to go do a mitzvah. I need to go help someone. I need to go be more righteous. I need to go be more patient. And that battle is happening inside us at all times. Therefore, she really wanted to know, how is it going to all turn out? Shel milchama pnimit, how is the internal battle going to resolve itself? Zo, shebalev bana, that was in the heart of her son. According to Simcha Bunim, this had nothing to do with Esav. She knew Esav was there. Nothing to do with the Jew and the Christian. Nothing to do with the yeshiva student and the idolater. It's the status of what's going to happen inside the heart of every yid. Mi yanchit et hamahaluma ha'achona. Who would deliver the final blow? V'yinatzech b'milchama, and win the war. I love this commentary because it's a very honest commentary, right? You have a very pious Hasidic rabbi basically admitting, all these were given as sermonettes. He's standing in front of his kahal and saying, when I walk by that place in the corner of town, depending on what kind of mood I'm in, sometimes my Yetzer Hara is wrestling inside of me, trying to be born, pulling me towards it, right? And thank God, most of the time when I walk by the yeshiva, right, my Yetzer HaTov is welling up inside of me, and I go into that place instead. But I'd be lying to you, kahal, if I told you that I was never confronting and battling my Yetzer Hara. And the question that Rivka was wondering, the question that every Jew should wonder is, who is going to deliver the final blow and win the battle? And of course, it's entirely up to each and every one of us, right? So it's left as a question. And what Rivka was dealing with in pregnancy, or what she bequeathed by giving birth to Yaakov, is that every future descendant of Yaakov will be plagued and challenged and ultimately be ennobled by this very question. Whom am I allowed to win? How is this running going to end up? Matiyeh b'sofa. What's going to be the end of all the accounting of my runnings in life? Am I going to run to the good? Am I going to run to the bad? And I'm going to run to the good more than I run to the bad? And what am I going to teach the next generation about how to do that type of running? So I thought this was a worthy exploration. And when it says Vatelech lidrosh, and she went to seek out, of course, that's the very process that we're all in every single time we go to the text, to go deeper into it and to see which ways that the text can continue to challenge us in our spiritual and personal and religious lives today.
Rabbi?
Yes?
Do you have time for me to say one thing fast on that last one?
Go ahead.
Because whenever I see his name, I think of the first thing I learned, which I think is the same one, which is the one who said, in one pocket, I have thing that says, I am but dust and ashes. And the other one, I have the note that says the world was created for me. And to me, that illuminates the end, because you have to be someone who thinks the world is created for me in order to know that it's time and what that final decisive action would be.
Yeah, that's a Hasidic teaching that was attributed to many different Hasidic masters, right? The utter humility of I'm nothing but dust of the earth, and the utter nobility of saying that God created the world just for me.
You mean it's not just in this? I thought it was Simcha Bunim No?
It's attributed to Simcha Bunim. It's also attributed to Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. It may be knowable who said it first, but I learned it from several different sources. Yeah. All right. Shabbat Shalom. Let's do Birkat Hamazon. Joey, did you have bread? Do you want to lead us?
Okay. Page 47 in the newer book, page 42 in the older one.
Joey, you want to do it to the mic so they can hear?
Yeah.
Shir Hamalot Beshuv Adonai et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kecholamim Az Yemale Sechok Pinu Ulshonenu Rina Az Yomeru Vagoim Higdil Adonai La Soti Mele Higdil Adonai La Soti Manu Hayinu Semechim Shuva Adonai et Shivitenu Ka'afikim Ba'negev Hazorim Bedima Berina Yiktoru Haloch Yelechu Vacho Nosei Meshech Hazara Bo Yavo Verina Nosei Alumotav Teilat Adonai Yadaber Pi Vivarech Kol Basar Shim Kodshul Elam Va'ed Va'anachnu Nivarech Yah Me'ata V'ad Olam Hallelujah Hodu Adonai Ki Tov Ki Le'olam Chasto Mi Amalel Gevurot Adonai Yashmiya Kol Tehilato Chavi Rein Varech
Yehi Shem Adonai Barach Metav Olam.
Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach Me'atav Yad Olam Birshut Chavi Rein Avrech Eloheinu Shechal Numi Shelo
Baruch Eloheinu Shalom Tuvo Chayinu.
Baruch Eloheinu Shechal Numi Shelo Tuvo Chayinu Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Hazan Et HaOlam Kulo Betuvo Bechein Bechesed Uvrachamim Hu Notein Lechem Lechol Basar Ki Le'olam Chasto Uvtuvo Hagadol Tamid l'chasar lanu ve'ayachsar lanu ma'azon le'olam va'ed ba'avur shemo hagadol kiwel zanum farnes la'kol umetiv la'kol umechin ma'azon lechol beriotav asher bara baruch atah Adonai hazan et hakol nadachadon.
For Marvel du Kaddish Rabbanan, page 38 in the Lev Shalem. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
V'amad, Yivrach, Yerutei, V'amlich Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, V'agala, V'zman Kari, V'yimru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevorach, Le'olam, Le'olam, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitshomam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shmei Kudeshah, B'richu, Leila, Min Kol Birchata, B'shirata, Tush B'chata, V'nechamata, Damiran, Be'alma, V'yimru, Amen. Al Yisrael, V'al Rabbanan, V'al Tamidehon, V'al Kol Tamidei Tamidehon, V'al Kol Mand, Askin B'oraita, Di V'yatra Hadain, V'di B'chol Atar V'yatar. Yehei Lachon, Lahon Ulchon Shlama Rabba, China V'chista V'rachamin, V'chayin Arichin, Umzona Revicha, Uforkana Min Kodam Abahon Di V'shmaya V'yimru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shmaya, V'chaim Tovim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. V'aseh Shalom Rumav, U'vrachamav Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. Baruch Hu 264, after which you may be seated. Baruch Hu Michaper Mon B'lo Yashkiver Bala Shiva Povlar Kol Chamato Adonai Hashem Melach Yi'anenu V'yom Koreinu Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamborah Baruch Hanai Marach Le'olam V'eh Baruch Adonai Hashem El Chai V'Kayam Temid Eloch Aleinu Le'olam V'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Ma'ariv Aravim V'avatcha Tasim Memenu Le'olamim Baruch Ata Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Acharei levavchem yacharei nechem asher atem zanim acharei. Adonai Elohechem emet v'emunah kazov v'kayam aleinu ki hu Adonai v'ein zulato v'nachnu Yisrael v'mohav. Hamarichenu U'malchutov ratzon kiblo elehem Moshe v'nesu lachanu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chula mi chamocha balim Adonai mi chamocha nadar b'kodesh norati lo d'osef ele malchut acharu v'necha bokeyam lifnei Moshe ze eli anu yamru Adonai imloch leolam v'nemar kivod Adonai Yaakov ugalo miyad chazak mimenu baruch ata Adonai Gal Yisrael. Ushmor tzeiteinu v'oinu l'chaim v'shalom yatav olam baruch ata Adonai shomer amo Yisrael la'ad baruch Adonai le'olam amen v'yamein baruch Adonai mitzvah shochin shalom baruch Adonai v'yakol amen baruch Adonai v'yom baruch Adonai v'layla baruch Adonai v'shochin baruch Adonai v'yom Yadcha afkid ruchi vadita oti Adonai malach Adonai malach Adonai malach amen Yamachut shechahi u'liyom ha'atim loch b'chavod ki lana melech ela ata baruch ata Adonai melech b'chvodot hamidim loch aleinu le'olam v'ed v'al kol ma'asav יתקדב יקדש שמר הבא. שמעתי יברח כתיבה מחמרתי בחייכון ובמכון וחדך ובית ישראל. לגלה בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמר המבורך. ואלם ימי יברח וישתבח ויתפאר שמם ונעשה ותדע ותלב תלש ונקודשה בריחו. ואלם יגבר חדב אשר התש ודב נחמתה דמירן בעלמה יאמרו amen. Amidas said quietly in a whisper beginning 270. Chatzikadosh 279. יתקדש יקדש שמר הבא. במד יברח וטבע מיך ובטבע חייכון ובמכון ומחדך ובישב בגלה בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמר המבורך לעולם וממה יברח וישתבח ויתפאר שמם ונעשה ותדע ותלב תלש ונקודשה בריחו. ולם יגבר חטא ואשר אתה תזותה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה יאמרו amen. We are seated in the middle of 279 for Vihinom. Vihinom Adonai Eloheinu Aleinu Maseh Denekon Aleinu Maseh Yadenu Ko Nenehu Yoshe Beseter Obetzel Shaddai Yulan Omar Lanai Matsim Atulatel. Rach Beinechet Habib B'Shilumat B'Shin Tereki Ata Adonai Maseh Elyon Samto Nechalot. kivi chashak be'afaltei asik be'yokiyad Hashem yikve'eni v'nei muno chesara achal sevi achavleu orech yamim asbiyehu ve'arei v'shuati orech yamim asbiyehu ve'arei v'shuati. Back to 216, second paragraph. Ve'ata kadosh yoshev tilo yisrael kara zeh zev yamar kadosh 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 Vati seinirach veshma charai kol rash gadol baruch Adonai mimkom molan ruch hashemit Adonai yimloch le'olam ve'ed. Adonai tzani manam iskav lanu akazal na tzor shanda b'dach b'cham ha'Hashem l'achyanim yakorin v'ruch l'an shirvan echlomodim v'yizkev v'nichayev v'nirev v'nirash torah b'chala. Yidchu b'Adonai ad yad kiviyad na'tzrulim yivdechu b'chaydesh mechilo azav kadosh Adonai Adonai chafetz laman sitko yagdil Torah v'yadir Yitgadav yigadash shemei rabah v'madir rachu teva michpo teva chayachon v'yamachon v'chaydecho b'yisrael v'lav zman kariv v'yamru amen Yehei shmei rabah vorach elam maya yibarach v'ishtabach v'yitparchma v'naseh v'tidav v'tol v'lalash v'negur sharichu v'lam yikol b'chatav v'shiratav v'yudav v'nechmatav demiran v'yalma v'yamru amen Tikabel tzodon v'aton d'chol b'yisrael gadam v'hondi v'shmaya v'yamru amen Yehei shlam rami min shemaya v'chayim alayim v'kol v'yamru amen Oseh shalom rama v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. We're going to pause as we've been doing every day since the massacre on October 7th and say a prayer for the state of Israel and a prayer for the IDF and a prayer for all those who remain in captivity. Prayer for the state of Israel is on page 178 in the Lev Shalem. Avinu shebashamayim tzur Yisrael v'goalo barech et medinat Yisrael reishit smichat gulatenu. Hagein aleh be'avrat chastecha ufros aleha sukat shlomecha ushlach orcha b'mitcha l'rasheha sareha v'yoatzeha v'taknem beitza tova milfanecha chazek et yedei mignei eretz kodshenu v'anchilem Eloheinu Yeshua v'ateret nitzachon tatrem v'natata shalom ba'aretz v'simchat olam le'oshveha v'nomar amen. I'll say a prayer for all of the soldiers of the IDF. Vishaberach Avatenu Abraham Yitzchak Yaakov Vivarech et Chaylet Tzvaganal Yisrael v'Anshe Kochot HaBitachon Haomdim al Mishmar Artzenu v'Yarei Eloheinu Migvul Halvanon v'Midbar Mitzrayim U'min Hayam HaGadol ad Lavo HaArba b'chol makom shehem b'yabasha ba'avir u'bayam Yitain Adonai et oivenu ha'kamim aleinu nigafim lefnehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishmor v'yatzil et chayleinu mikol tzara v'tzukah u'ikol nego machala Yishlach bracha v'atzacha b'chol maseidehem Yadber son'enu tachtehem v'yitrem v'cheter Yeshua u'vater yitzachon v'kuyam behem hakatuv ki Adonai Elohechem ha'olechem echem lilachem lachem imo evechem lo'shiatchem v'nomar amen. And today, which begins the 36th day of their captivity, we say this following blessing on behalf of all of the captives. Mishaberach Avotenu Abraham Yitzchak Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel V'Leah Vivarech v'Yishmor v'Yinsor Nedrei Tzvaganal Yisrael U'Shvuyav Ekol Achenu Hanotanim B'Tzara V'Shiviyah Bavor Shekol HaKahal HaKadosh Hazem Yipel Bavuram HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachmim Alehem Yotzeim Yichoshech V'Tzalmavet U'Moshotehem Yinatek U'Mimtzukotehem Yoshiyim Yishivei Mehira Lachek B'Shpechotehem Yodul Anai Chasto V'Niflotav L'Fnei Adam Yikuyam Behem Migrash Katu Ufteyei Adonai Yeshuvun V'Vat Tzion V'Rina V'Simchat Olam Al Rasham Sason V'Simcha Yasigu V'Nasu Yagon Banacha V'Nomar Amen. Aleinu, page 281. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adonai kol ha'tegel ha'zeh v'shachavim u'modim l'fnei melech l'chim ha'kadosh baruch hu Hu Eloheinu Eloheinu moken elek ha'katuv b'torato v'adatai v'shvot el v'lach yirah v'shamayim mingal v'yakov hakin ekave lechan Eloheinu mehira b'divas l'takeinu ilam malchut shadai יחלכו למתו מלכותך תמלוך עליהם מעל עמד כי המלכות שלך היא וליום מעט תמלוך בכבוד. הכתוב בתורתך אדוני מלך לעולם ונאמר וירא אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Mourner's Kaddish. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמא יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם לעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא V'yatadar, v'yatale, v'yatalal, Shemeda Kudusha, Rihu, Leila, Min Kol Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechamata, Kamiran, Be'alma, V'yamru, Amen. V'hei Shlam Araba, Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'yamru, Amen. Oseh Shalom Imramav, Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'yamru, Amen. We conclude with Hatikva, page 448 in the Lev Shalem. Kolod balei v'fenima, nefesh Yehudi homiya, ulfatei mizrach kadima, in Letzion Sophia. Od lo avda tikvateinu, hatikva bat shnot alpayim, liotam chofshi be'artzeinu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim, liotam chofshi be'artzeinu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Do Havdalah. One second, Joe, I need to turn it off. Yeshua, Ushavtemayim besason mimayne Yeshua, Ladonai Yeshua, Alamcha berchatecha sela, Adonai tzvaot imanu. Miskav lanu Elohei Yaakov Sela, Adonai Tzevaot, Ashrei Adabotei Abach, Adonai Yoshia, Hamelech Yaneinu B'yom Kareinu, La Yehudim Hayta Ora, Vesimcha Vesason B'yekar Kein Tiyeh Lanu Kos Yeshuot Esa, Uv'Shem Adonai Ekra, Yainanai Yananai Ainanai Yananai Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafe. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei besamim.
Amen.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei miorei ha'esh. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamagdil ben chodesh lechol ben hol lechoshech ben Yisrael hamim ben yom hashvi l'sheshim mehamaseh. Baruch Atah Adonai hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. Hamavdil ben kodesh Eshlecho Chatoteinu Imcho Zareinu V'chaspeinu Yarbe Yarbe Kacho V'kacho Chavim Balayla Zareinu V'chaspeinu Yarbe Yarbe Kacho V'kacho Chavim Balayla Eliyahu Mashiach ben David b'mehera yavo eleinu Mashiach ben David. I forgot to print these sheets without taking. These sheets have God's name in it. I forgot to have it not have God's name in it. So collect them and I'll bring them to the Geniza. They need to be Genized rather than thrown out. Shavua Tov, everybody. Shavua Tov.
There you go.
Shavua Tov, Taibo.
Shavu, tell Gary and Marlise I was missing you.
Yeah,
I'm
we were
wondering
on we were on Zoom for a bit.
Or YouTube,
You mean on stream?
YouTube for a bit. Yeah, just
YouTube.
did.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, they
I
had
thought-
We had to look at the old email because this week didn't
Marlise
have
did it.
it.
She's more experienced than I am.
Yes, I found
Ah,
it. Yeah.
and I thought maybe that you were just in a part of the room because I couldn't see the beginning of the room. I was a little late. So
Mm.
sometimes you can see. So I thought maybe, you were there. But anyway, nice to see you both.
You too. You
Oh,
too.
look, there's a small person. There's a small person there.
Oh, oh.
Aw,
Whose is that?
I don't know people
I
well
missed
enough.
it.
She looked maybe four
No,
Four- 4 years old and sleepy.
Okay.
That's what she looked.
Yeah, I didn't see
Yeah.
who that was.
Yeah.
or who
There was an incredible speaker today from who spoke about what happened in near Gaza. And how he was lucky that he was alive. Now
I know the speaker was from the kibbutz that Betham is.
no, this is actually you're right.
This was a different kibbutz. I thought it was the same.
This was actually
kibbutz.
wasn't kibbutz. They're sending him. This is the Israeli government now doing. They're sending him out to talk. He was at a
You told me the beach.
at the beach with friends around. So he saw boats coming. He heard this huge loud noises. He went to bed late. He went to bed like 5. And at 5:30, all these loud noises were happening, which when they were starting to attack, Hamas was starting to attack. And he was sleeping, didn't know what was happening. And eventually he realized he saw these people coming in boats and he realized this is not cool. So he was able to run for a while. And then he realized he went back to the cars. He went to a military base. They didn't let him in because they didn't know who the hell they were, And so eventually the military let them in. He was able to. That's after for that he tried to get his car. He got his car and was able to go like 100 miles an hour. Somebody else was driving, and they were going to slow down because they saw a body, and he was going to slow down. Actually, the body then got up. And there were Hamas's people were shooting at him from all directions, and so they survived. And then he made it to an army base, which initially they let him in eventually. And
I'll look for that because since I don't go anymore, since it's YouTube just doesn't work for me. But
It wasn't on.
It wasn't on. It was on the.
Oh, it was at the library.
Library menu.
Yeah,
But
which
we have the name. The name. You'll
Oh,
see.
got it.
yeah, the name in the bulletin. Yeah.
He's
got it.
He's speaking in many places. And
So I'll look on YouTube. But the thing is, you may or may not know that I also Betham was the 4th place. Third counting my local, but I also belong to a Cleveland.
Yeah.
And in Cleveland today, someone from Magenta Vita Dome spoke. I wasn't on. I'm really not sleeping well and I had an up all night. But people from Cleveland at my Mincha Marv at Cleveland said it was one of the best speakers they've ever heard, period. Wow. And the name is B'nai Yeshurun in Pepper Pike, because if you just put in B'nai Yeshurun, you may get the one in New York. And they always have it. I think it would have been in the main sanctuary. They always have it up on the archives. If you go to the live stream page, they said it was near the end. So I'm going to watch that later tonight because for years, actually, my father-in-law is, let me get it right, 94 and a half.
Okay.
And
That's important. At that age, it's not
let's not forget the half. And I manage his charitable donations. And so far, that's the thing I did is I gave through my Gang David Adom like way more than he usually gives. But that was the first immediate thing that we did as a family.
Yeah, we did that too.
Yeah, when I heard, it's not just I would have anyway, but when I heard that the 2 ambulances were, however many ambulances were stolen anyway.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for decades, my Gay David Dome, but more recently after the Pittsburgh Synagogue Massacre, I'm from Pittsburgh, I started giving to Zaka, Z-A-K-A, and I got an appeal from them that they're now trying to go back and get precious belongings and clean the blood off, people who fled. Anyway, so I was gonna look at that. Anyway, I could go on, but I won't. And they're not shutting us down.
I was surprised. I'm like thinking any moment, but I guess maybe they're
hearing you speak.
Yeah, no. Sometimes
you spoke to the rabbi, so you got to be important.
Wait, what?
You spoke to you asked a question, so everybody.
Yeah, we heard you when we were on YouTube. We heard you. But,
right. That's the disadvantage. You can't. And you may have missed. I answered a question because you can't tell when you can't see the room. You don't know who else is raising their hand anyway. Earlier. Anyway. Oh, very interesting. Right. I know Library Minyan is never halachically. They're never broadcast unless sometimes when they combine with the main sanctuary, then sometimes
it depends. Yeah, it's because there's people that they're not that Shomer Shabbos, but they really don't want to have their pictures taken on Shabbat. I mean,
I know. I remember
Sandra,
well, no, there's different people. Yeah, but during they made that decision that they were able. I guess they had, however it was, they came to a decision, and it hasn't been. It's the minhag now, which is
good. I guess during the high level of COVID, they broke that. They were able to screen it, but clearly once we
for library, I don't remember ever seeing Library Minyan. The only thing I know, which I used to go to, but I'm not sleeping well enough, is Library Minyan has a Mishnah class at 9 before they start.
Right.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's on Zoom.
Yeah.
But I never remember.
I think the beginning.
Well.
Oh, but I did
the big meeting when they discussed it was like early 21.
No, exactly. But
I don't know.
They had initially it.
2020.
Then people decided we don't want to have, particularly when they had numerous minyanim.
Right. I think the idea was as long, and then the temple decided at least one thing would be filmed. The one, I guess generally that's how it's been now. So
got it. And I didn't find Betham. I found it through my adult child because Rock gave a talk. Even though he was home, he joined to please his aged parents. He joins where he is, the Jewish whatever, university. And Rock gave a talk for High Holy Days. And I thought, oh, he's really interesting. Let me look at his shul. And that's how I found Betham.
Okay.
But I probably didn't start coming. I could look it up. But the point is, I wasn't doing Betham things from the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
Took me maybe
No, that's fine.
October, November, so however many months. Well, started in March. So let's say it took me half a year to get doing things with Betham. Right.
Anyways, it's a small world,
Very small world. Actually, I mean the wrong way of a small world. My Cleveland, one of the people who's long term. And actually, Library Minyan couple, I'll remember who it is. They're the World Livers and Travelers. They were in Cleveland for a while, so this is where they belonged. Anyway, someone who's a long-term person in Cleveland. She's from And the man that was killed at the protest, that quote, elderly. All the news reports said elderly, and then it came out he was 69. I
Right,
said,
so, that bothered me too. I just want you to know
oh,
that. It bothered
no,
me
it
too.
didn't bother me. It didn't bother me, Gary, because I've been saying I'm old since 60. I'm just telling you. So I'm like, look, even the news sources, but she went to nursery school with him in Scranton. I mean, the small world thing.
Oh, how sad. I mean,
Yeah,
sad.
the last
Yeah.
I saw,
Yeah.
no arrest, right? Somebody was in custody and then let go. Anyway, neither here nor there.
Yeah, that's in the LA Times today says, yeah, they still, the police are
They
still
don't know what
asking. They don't, there's conflicting reports and they don't know. They just know that he fell and hit the,
Hit his
that's
head.
Right.
his head.
God.
So it
Don't
would
exact-
be,
yeah.
it would be contributory negligence,
Yeah, I
but
don't
it
think-
depends
yeah.
on how different states look at it differently. Who knows?
The head of the mosque that he members belonged to said he was sorry this happened and he apologized. This never should happen. Quote.
Mhm.
Got
Yeah.
it. Anyway, always a pleasure.
Yeah. Shavua Tov. Table, just which part of Maryland are you in again? You're in.
I'm in North Bethesda, which is a DC suburb.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah,
just
I wanted to go to the march. I am so torn. 50 years ago, I went to the march. I went to Israel around this time 50 years ago, and then there was a march on Washington, and I'm so tempted to go, which I'm not going to do, to go to the march, Tuesday's march.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, you would have to fly, obviously, right?
Yeah. And I was just asking because our daughter went to the University of Maryland, so
What year is she? You said past tense. What year did she finish?
She finished